Welcome to Expats Listen with Ryan and Liz, the podcast where we share the realities of the true roller coaster that is expat life.
I'm Ryan. I'm a South African living in Portugal.
And I'm Liz, originally from the USA and also currently living in Portugal. But we're not in Portugal this week, are we, Ryan?
No, we're in the UK, Northern Ireland, hanging out with some sheepies on some green fields and enjoying the lovely people and amazing sights out here.
Yeah, it's true. So we're on a road trip. We both work online, so we've been able to take the dog and take a bit of a longer trip up to the UK. And it's been really nice. And it's been a bit quiet, though. So, Ryan, you felt like you needed to spice things up, didn't you?
I live a life of excitement, Liz, and, it was just getting a bit too quiet, and I was not happy with that. So what I thought I would do is get my appendix up and going and red and inflamed. And I ended up needing to go to hospital to get that pulled out of me.
Yeah, so that brings us to this week's topic, which is medical emergencies. And Ryan is a person who seems to like having these medical emergencies.
My favorite thing to do next to surfing.
So, Ryan, why don't you tell us what happened last week?
So last week, just a general life week, living, enjoying life, being happy. And then I started getting a few flu symptoms, I would say, just a feeling a little bit down, a feeling a little bit flat. And I didn't think much of it. The last time we were in the UK many years ago, I got way too drunk at the pub, drinking way too many Guinnesses, and actually struggled heavily from dehydration. And I got the same feeling this time, albeit without the Guinnesses. So I really thought that I was dehydrated and I just needed a few Gatorades or energy drinks and I'd be back in the mix. Went to sleep and then woke up really not feeling well. And we needed to change accommodation on that particular day. So I said, okay, let's stop by the local supermarket, grab some of these drinks. I'll down like 2 liters of this stuff and hopefully feel much better by the time we arrive at the new place. We stop at the supermarket. Liz walks inside to do some light shopping for me and for some groceries that we might have needed for the day. And while she was in there, I was in the car with Henry and I started getting a little bit of a shiver, I'm sick, this is not a nice feeling, and, a couple of shakes. And then the shakes started getting more and more hectic to the point where I was not able to control my body and the muscles in my neck were being strained because of the strength of the convulsions, and I could not move. I could not operate my phone. And Liz all the while was inside very blissfully unaware because there was no way of her knowing.
It was crazy. I come out of the supermarket with a couple of Gatorades and I get to the car and there's Ryan shaking uncontrollably and Henry, our dog, in the back seat just looking like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what to do here. And yeah, it was really scary because I've never seen you shake that way. And you've had fevers before, but it felt different.
Yeah, the last time I shook like that, I was a little baby boy suffering from Lyme disease in Africa. So this is not something that we deal with on a regular basis. And I think that considering how bad it was, I realized that it really was that bad. Like it wasn't just something that was going to pass. It wasn't just going to be something that I would just get to the other side of.
Yeah.
And I said to Liz, this is really bad, Liz. We might need to do something here.
Yeah. And I think if you know Ryan, you know that he doesn't admit that he's not feeling well quickly. He will be the first person to carry everything and be like, it's not even heavy, to be sick and be like, no, I'm fine.
Rambo didn't complain, Liz. Rambo didn't get flus and things like that.
Yeah. So when Ryan actually says, I'm sick, for me, it means that we've passed the point of pharmacy and I need to take him to the hospital. So I think this is a really interesting part of talking about living abroad, but also traveling when you live abroad. So we're traveling by car, which I'm grateful that we had a car for this.
Transport.
But we've got the dog, we've got the car, I've got Ryan who needs to go to a hospital. We don't know where we are. We are in a tiny town in Northern Ireland that we had never been to before. And we don't know anyone or anything really. So you just put into Google Maps, like closest hospital.
Yeah, usually you're looking for the closest McDonald's.
Yeah.
And this time you're asking Google to save your life, you know?
Yeah.
Wow, it was really something. And so Liz plugged in the nearest hospital to us.
And we head to that hospital. And I think during the course of the drive, Ryan just closed his eyes.
Yes, Liz had given me 2 paracetamols, which went a long way to fighting that massive fever that had spiked, which had caused this little bit of a seizure. So that really helped a lot, and it basically knocked me out.
Yeah.
And there Liz was gunning it through the Northern Irish countryside, trying to get us to this hospital.
Because that's the thing about small towns in small places, that there aren't that many hospitals in Northern Ireland, especially when you're in small towns. We had to drive about 30 minutes to get to the nearest hospital. And it's not like 30 minutes of highway driving.
No.
It's 30 minutes of driving on tiny little roads that only one car can fit, like tons of twists and turns, and not the easiest drive to make when you're feeling a panic like that.
Yeah, and also I'm sitting in the passenger seat, like just bobbling around, limp, because I've got no energy in my body. And I remember Liz asking me strategic questions every few minutes.
Yeah, because I needed you to talk.
To make sure that I was still with her, you know, and very scary thing to have to go through, you know. On one hand, yes, I'm in the driver's seat, figuratively, of being the one that was so sick and driving this process. But also I know how difficult it was for Liz, being the one that was now responsible for an incapacitated husband and a little dog in a foreign country, and driving down these tiny little farm roads, getting to a hospital that we had never been before. We don't even know if they can help us there.
Yeah, we didn't even know what was wrong with you. And I think at this point still, we were like, okay, fever, dehydration, we just need to get you some fluids and we'll be okay.
Yeah.
So I get us to the emergency room and we have the dog. So I leave the windows cracked open a bit and Henry just stays in the car and I take Ryan inside the hospital. And we check in, and that's when the word seizure was used because we were describing the shaking from the fever. And then he asked, was it a seizure? And my only experience with seizures is from a dog we used to have, Maggie, beautiful dog. I miss her so much. And she had epilepsy and she used to have seizures. And when she would have seizures, it was like her eyes would roll to the back of her head. She was completely uncontrollable. There was no way that you would be able to have her even look at you. So I didn't think this was a seizure.
But that's the thing, is that I think it's so much about a perception situation as the person experiencing it or having seen it or witnessed it. Because, you know, so many things in life are a certain thing, but because you don't want to accept that that's actually what happened, you find so many reasons to say, no, it might have just been some violent shaking and writhing around and loss of muscle control and, you know, flirting with the loss of consciousness and tremendous muscle spasms. But I'm not sure if it was a seizure.
Yeah, exactly. And you get caught up on these things because I think also I feel so scared in a medical situation that you don't want to say the wrong thing.
Yeah, what does this mean for real treatment? Absolutely.
Because like if we are going down this path that he had a seizure, then we're going to be treating for that. And am I responsible for putting him down the wrong path of treatment? So I really needed to be as clear as we could of we don't know and we've never had this before and all of that. So yeah, then they admitted him and asked him a bunch more questions, but they still weren't sure. They knew that you had some kind of infection.
Well, I don't know. So I don't know if the immediate response was an infection, because I think raising that flag of perhaps there was some kind of seizure. Seizures can result from so many different potential illnesses or injuries. So it could be something electrical, it could be something muscular, it could be something infection-wise. There's so many different things. And at that stage, you know, you're just going through triage and they are checking you and saying, yes, well, there's clearly something wrong with you because this is what you've been through. So let's put you in the line and then we'll figure out how to go about doing this. And I think because there was this particular set of symptoms, they took it reasonably seriously to actually make sure that they could find it out, even if the actual cause wasn't that bad.
And your fever was like 39.
I was 39 to 40 for a long time.
Yeah, so I think that's another reason that they had to take it so seriously. So we're in the emergency room and I'm spending 20, 30 minutes with Ryan and then going back out into the car, spending 20, 30 minutes with the dog, leaving him back and going back and forth and back and forth. And then I just didn't know what to do. We had been there for about 4 or 5 hours at that point.
Yeah.
We still didn't know what was wrong with you. They were still doing tests. They were still taking blood samples, taking urine samples, doing scans, trying to see what the problem was, but they didn't have an answer yet. And I just went into the car and I called my best friend because that's what you do when you don't know what to do. And he was like, all right, Liz, this is the situation. You are not going to be driving 2 more hours to get to your accommodation that you have booked.
We had so many big plans for the day. Yeah.
He was like, you're going to find somewhere to sleep here tonight. I will get it for you. And that's going to be that. So thank you, Eric. Always.
No,
there.
thanks. Eric really pulled through for you there.
Yeah,
really.
For sure. So he found me maybe the most extravagant Airbnb that we've ever stayed at. And it was stunningly gorgeous. It was a 3-bedroom over on this hill overlooking a lake. And it was absolutely beautiful. There was a hot tub. There was this huge outdoor area.
So listeners, this is what Liz gets up to when I'm in the hospital, right?
Yeah, this is what Liz gets up to. So we book this place and I go. And the guy was really nice because booking it last minute. I told him the whole story. We needed to be close to the hospital, all of this. And I just drop off Henry, the dog, at this place with his hot tub and his 3 bedrooms and his giant sprawling mansion. And then I go back to the hospital and I spend the next 5-6 hours at the hospital with you. And then finally they say it's appendicitis, confirmed. And we need to take out the appendix.
Yeah, and so they gave us that news confirming that my appendix had enough. I was able to rely on it being quite a accurate diagnosis because I had had x-rays, I had a CT scan, I had I don't know how many rounds of blood tests and urine tests, and I had gone through maybe 7 bags of fluids in an IV. I had gone through, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 bottles of paracetamol intravenously. I had had about 2 more seizures that were undone by that paracetamol. It was a long day. And
yeah, it was a day.
Yeah, and I hadn't eaten any food since the previous night at 6 o'clock.
So now we're talking, it's like 11 p.m. on Friday night, and Ryan hadn't eaten anything since about 6 or 7 p.m. on Thursday. So it's been more than 24 hours.
It's been a long time. And, you know, that's not the end of the world, but, you know, you're not really feeling that great because you're also feeling sick. I think also what threw me off was while I was waiting to find out what was wrong with me, I was also getting these seizures.
Yeah.
Every time that happened, they would empty a bottle of paracetamol into my body via the IV. So that's like quite exhausting to go through, and you're waiting in between rounds of treatment.
And you just don't know. And I think this is like the biggest thing is that stress of what is wrong with me. We don't know. We're still trying to find out. Is heart pumping, terrifying.
Yeah, because if they don't know what's wrong with you, then they can't do something to fix you.
Exactly.
And if they do the wrong thing and it doesn't fix you, now you've gone through treatment for something that you don't need, and you haven't gotten rid of what's initially caused the problem. So it was really difficult to go through. But, and I think maybe now is the right time to say this, everyone was so nice.
So unbelievably nice.
I think that one of the main things that made me feel better in there was believing that the people who were helping me actually cared about me feeling better. And that goes hand in hand with the actual medical treatment that you're getting, because you know that it's not just to get you out the door.
Yeah.
It's not just to say that they did their job so that they can move on to the next thing. It really meant a lot, and it really had such an impact on my experience there.
Yeah, which kind of leads us to what happened next, which once they said it's appendicitis, we need to get the appendix removed as soon as possible. They didn't do surgeries at that hospital. So they actually had to transfer you to a different hospital, which was about an hour drive away through more tiny roads in another tiny town. And that's where you were going to get the surgery. So the ambulance drivers came and were the nicest guys ever. And I told them the story. They asked if I wanted to go with them in the ambulance or follow. And I said, look, here's the deal. We have this dog. I need to kind of go back and check on the dog. He's staying at the most ridiculous, fancy accommodation in this town. And I think I'll meet you at that hospital after. And the ambulance driver said to me, oh, like, of course, go take care of the dog. Give me your WhatsApp number and I'll send you texts and keep you updated during the ride and then let you know once he's safely in the other hospital. My jaw was on the floor. I really
nicest guys.
Couldn't believe that he was going to go so far out of his way to keep me updated and make sure that I was okay. So I went back to Henry's luxurious accommodation and checked on him, took him out, let him pee, gave him a little bit of a midnight walk, and then took maybe a 1 hour nap. And when I woke up from that nap to a text from the ambulance driver saying that you were safe and sound in your hospital and ready to go. And that was just so comforting.
Really, they are wonderful, wonderful people. I was obviously in the ambulance while we were going to the surgical hospital. And the whole way there, they're talking to me. They're telling me about their lives, about the places that we were driving through.
About rugby.
We were talking about rugby. And there was just so much sincerity and genuineness because they were just being who they are. And who they are is just wonderful, wonderful people. And it was really so comforting. Really, it made me feel better.
Yeah.
Going through an experience like that with people who really cared. And to know that they just didn't care only about doing their job, they cared about what people were feeling. It really makes you feel as though there's so much that can be added to the world if you're emotionally engaged with what it is that you're doing for a living. And I got to experience that firsthand. And really, it gave me so much love, so much admiration and respect for the people of Northern Ireland, because everyone, even at that initial hospital and the ambulance drivers and the surgical hospital, were so damn nice.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for it. But anyway, we arrive at the hospital. I'm supposed to get my surgery upon arrival.
Yep.
And I get out, I get into my hospital bed, and I put my surgical gown on, and I am ready to go. And they introduce me to the surgeon and to the anesthesiologist, and we have our initial conversation saying this is what's going to go down. They're going to reach into my body and pull out this appendix, and everything's going to be fine. And they say, well, I'm going to go down and finish the surgery that's happening before yours, and then we will call for you, and then you'll be all right. Fast forward 4 or 5 hours later, nothing has happened.
Yeah.
And then 6 hours later, they wheel in my ward mate, who was the guy that had the surgery before me, to have his appendix taken out. And we discover that they had complications with his surgery, which is why they didn't get to me.
Yeah. So what was supposed to be under an hour surgery, his was 3.5 hours because it was quite complicated. They had to do open surgery, and it was just a bit of a nightmare.
The kind of appendicitis surgery that you don't want.
Yeah.
It's the option that you don't want to go through where it's been infected and it's burst and there's damage around that organ. They needed to go through all of that. And he was such a young guy.
17, such a
Young
sweet,
man.
sweet boy. And his whole family
Just
were
the nicest
incredible.
group of people. They also offered to take care of Henry.
Yeah.
They wanted us to come stay at their house. It was just a whole thing.
Really, they were so sweet. So now I moved to a different accommodation that's closer to the new hospital and a little bit cheaper because I couldn't afford to stay at that luxury mansion much longer. But we're staying there, and then I'm going back and forth between the hospital and the dog. And yeah, this boy who was Ryan's roommate in the hospital, his mom was coming and staying, and we were just chatting, and they were so kind. And then we exchanged WhatsApp numbers, and then we would just keep each other updated. So when she wasn't there, I would send her little messages of like, oh, like Robbie's feeling a bit better. I think he just had some dinner and he's feeling good. And she would send me messages. Oh, Ryan's finally sleeping. He snores, and like laughing at that. And I think it was so comforting having that. And it really does go to show that when you're far from home,
Yeah.
you need people just as badly as when you're home, but you don't have your people. So you rely on the kindness of strangers. And we got that.
Yeah.
We got that in spades. We got so much kindness from everyone.
No, it was so humbling, really, to go through that experience with so many different people helping us just with sheer kindness, because it can very quickly change into, I've gotten sick and I'm at a foreign hospital and I don't know what's going on around me and I don't know what to do and I feel so alone and I feel so sad and I feel so sick. And thank goodness we didn't have that experience in this time.
Yeah. And just another moment to show appreciation for the NHS that this system, Ryan had to wait an extra 24 hours to get his surgery after what they originally wanted. So it wasn't the fastest thing that could have possibly happened, but it was fine.
Yeah, the hardest thing we needed to do in that whole process was to wait.
Exactly.
And to wait in a public healthcare scenario is a very normal and very natural thing. And thank goodness I wasn't experiencing any serious pain in that interim period of time while I was waiting. But I also understand because of the number of people that were around us that also needed attention.
Exactly.
Like you actually walk in there and you see the person that arrived 10 minutes after you in the emergency ward, and then you see them on the other side where people are being treated, and then you see them where their medication is being doled out. You see them, you see them through the whole process, and you completely understand how the cycle works.
Yeah.
And there's just so much time, and there's so many people, and there's so many staff members, and that's how it works. So that was the hardest thing. But the NHS, in my experience of it, if I had to review it, 10 out of 10.
For me, 10 out of 10.
Nicest people, so grateful. Things worked out well for us. Maybe if my health outcome wasn't this good, I might have felt differently.
Sure.
But for me and what I experienced, I would say 2 thumbs up. Thank you very much, NHS.
I also really appreciated how international it was. Ryan was treated by doctors and nurses from a dozen different countries.
It was unbelievable. And all of them were on the same page with regards to quality. And that really blew me away because, I don't know, man, like this is an expat podcast. There's so much negativity online about so much international travel for different people. The whole racism, xenophobic story, right? Which is something we have to fight every day. But to see people from so many different corners of the globe working together, doing something positive and helping people, that's really invaluable because it's real life. It's actually practical. You're seeing it with your own 2 eyes. I had conversations and made friends with so many of those people in reality, rather than just hearing the hatred and seeing the hatred that you see online just all the time.
And we got to hear their stories
It was so cool. It was so refreshing. It was so sweet. It was just something that made you feel better, like this is what the world could be.
Yeah. I think we also had a real fear being in the NHS, in the public system, not as British people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that as an American, so many things in my mind come back to how much is this going to cost? And that absolute terror of how much is this going to cost? And the NHS in the emergency room, if you have an emergency that needs to be treated immediately, it's free. It's free for British people. It's free for expats and immigrants. It's free for tourists. It's free for anyone who is in the United Kingdom and is having an emergency. And I didn't know that before we went in.
Yeah,
and of
we were
course,
prepared to pay.
Yeah. And we do have travel insurance. And I think this is a moment to say, make sure that you have travel insurance. Always. You never know what's going to happen. You never know what the rules are going to be. You never know any of these things. So having that travel insurance is absolutely crucial. But knowing that the NHS was free and we didn't have to go through any payment or any fights with the insurance or anything was this weight that was lifted off of my shoulders. And I had this fear in the back of my mind of, are the people treating him going to be have gritted teeth about the fact that here's this tourist who's coming in and using our medical system? Because everything I've heard is that the NHS is busy and overfilled. Under pressure, exactly. Yeah. Doctors are working too many hours. There's not enough staff. There's all of these issues with the number of people who are accessing this care. So are they going to be upset that we're here as tourists and we're accessing this care?
Well, I'll be honest. I'm very sure that if you were to tell the story to maybe the wrong person, they would definitely take that stance.
Yeah.
Of these people aren't from here. They don't deserve this health care. They should pay. This is why this country's gone to the dogs. You know, that kind of perspective. And I understand where they're coming from because they've got that hatred in their hearts. That's the primary thing. But I think that they also don't understand what the ideal is in terms of what humanity should be aiming for, of being able to offer everyone the opportunity to feel better and get the medical treatment that they need wherever they happen to be. Like, it should be a global thing.
And we have to say, not a single doctor, nurse, staff member, fellow patient family member, not a single person that we encountered in the entire time that we were at either hospital had that stance.
Nothing. I did not feel any negativity from anyone, even the fellow patients, like you're saying, about any kind of treatment that was being handed out. I mean, I would go so far as to say there was this little bit of a team spirit vibe.
For sure.
About everyone that was in that hospital, because, you know, I was waiting in the line for my x-ray and I was sitting next to a guy who had fallen off a ladder and broken his pinky finger. And I had a fat chat with him and his wife about how this experience was for them and like what they were planning to do, how this is going to affect them, just creating a relationship with them. And it was really so wholesome, talking about us all being in the situation that none of us wanted to be in, but we were there, grateful for being treated, grateful to be alive, you know, a bit tired of waiting too.
Sure. And
happy that we were on the mend, because that's what we were there to do. And I'm just so happy and grateful that that's the way things turned out for us, to be part of a group of people who were all positive in what was a very negative situation.
They turned it into such a positive situation. And I think that when I look back at it, even just a week later, yes, it was really scary and you went through a lot of pain. But everyone was so nice.
I mean, that's the thing, is that like I can complain about having been sick and having needed to go through surgery for sure. But other than those two things, I had a great time.
Exactly. And we like made friends. A week later, the ambulance driver texted me again on WhatsApp to say, hey, just checking in. Is everything okay? Hope that Ryan's recovering well.
And I'm looking forward to them visiting us in Portugal.
Exactly. He said he's going to come down to Portugal to visit. And I can't wait to have him. I think really NHS 10 out of 10 experience.
NHS and Northern Ireland. Just superstars, amazing. Wonderful people, just the nicest people. So moved at that experience just in totality. My appendix would have given me stress wherever I was going to be in the world at that time.
Yeah.
And, when you start thinking about bigger things than yourself, maybe that's why I was in Northern Ireland, and I had the opportunity to get that kind of treatment and to be saved that way and meet all of these amazing people and learn a new way of appreciating the world.
But Ryan, this wasn't your first medical emergency abroad.
No, I have a habit.
It?
I have a habit, Liz. I'm not having trouble giving it up.
Okay, Ryan, why don't you tell us about what happened 2 years ago?
Okay, so this is a bit of a bigger one, a bit less charming, and I guess still feel good, but maybe a bit heavier. So on November the 19th in 2023, I had a massive heart attack, and it was unexpected. It was not something that I had built towards. I didn't have any cardiovascular issues up until that point. In fact, I'd had some blood work done shortly before that saying that I was actually fine.
Yeah, you were in good health. Everything was fine. We'd even had those tests. The only things that you had against you were family history.
Yep.
Your father died young of a heart attack.
Yep.
And bad luck.
Yeah, and we were sitting at home on a Sunday night watching one of those terrible Hallmark movies, which are actually really good. And I had just finished eat dinner. And I felt I had some indigestion, so I started walking around the kitchen looking for some effervescent salts, those things that you can use to neutralize that, and it just wasn't going away. And I just felt, this is really not feeling good. I'm feeling hot. My chest is hurting. It's moved from being uncomfortable to hurting a little bit. And then I just kind of realized that something was up, like I'm actually having some kind of medical issue here. I considered having a nap.
Yeah, he wanted to take a nap.
Just to think maybe if I close my eyes for half an hour, this will pass. And after lying in bed for 2 seconds, I realized this was not going to pass.
And that's when I asked you, should we take your blood pressure?
Yes.
Maybe your blood pressure is showing us that there's something wrong. And you said, yeah, but then you were struggling to even lift your arm for me to put the blood pressure cuff on.
Yeah.
And that's when I said, okay, Ryan, this is too much. If you can't let me take your blood pressure, we're going to go to the hospital and they're going to take it. And that's when you said yes. And again, Ryan Govender is not a person who just says, okay, I'll go to the hospital. I thought that you were going to be like, fine, here, take my arm, take my blood pressure.
I usually give conditions. I'll say, well, if this doesn't stop in 25 minutes, then I might consider doing something. If my temperature doesn't drop by 2 degrees in the next half an hour, then I'll do something.
So that's why I said, if you don't put this blood pressure cuff on right now, you're going to the hospital. And you were like, okay.
Yes, and I realized I needed to go to the hospital because I actually just couldn't carry on that way, and I knew something big was happening to me. So I remember grabbing a snack out of the cupboard for Henry and throwing it at him because we were on the way, not throwing it at him, like throwing it to him. But we needed to get to the car as quickly as possible. We live on the 4th floor of our building without an elevator. So we had to run down the stairs.
Yeah.
Ran down the stairs, got into the car. We've got, like Liz was saying, private healthcare insurance. So we went to the private healthcare facility in our town. And I jumped out of the car. Liz went to get parking. I walked inside. And now this is all happening in Portugal, which means that it's a different experience to what we had in Ireland to a certain extent. And there's something called the reflexive no in Portugal, which is the first response will be no or negative.
No matter what.
No matter what. And that's when it hit me, because I go up to the emergency room to the young lady that was working at the reception there and say to her, listen, I think I'm pretty sure that I'm having a heart attack. I have all of the symptoms for a heart attack and I think it's happening right now. And her response was, no, probably not. Just go sit over there.
So then I park the car and I come in, and now you need to get your American angry on a bit. And I said, no, you need to treat him immediately. Come on.
Something's up. So they drag me into the back, into the actual emergency facility where people are being treated. They put me on the table. And then they start checking just the most basic things, blood pressure, temperature, heart rate, all of those things. And they just say, yes, this man is having a heart attack. And they cleared out the entire emergency room because the expectation probably was that I wasn't going to make it through that, because it was happening at that stage. And so this might be some advice for people in Portugal. It's just from our experience. It's not vetted. This is not by policy or administration. It's just what we went through. But private healthcare is very different to public healthcare. And we were at the wrong facility, basically, for me to have a heart attack.
Yeah, I was actually shouted at. So Ryan was now in the emergency room being treated by doctors. And one of the doctors came out to talk to me, to update me on what was happening, and shouted at me that, how dare you take him to the private hospital? What's wrong with you? Why didn't you take him to the public hospital? And I think from our perspective, we had this private healthcare. We had only really ever used private healthcare because whenever we needed to get a test or get healthcare, we would just go to private because we had this private healthcare. So it made sense to us. And I think that it seemed logical.
Yeah.
But what they told me then, and what we've since learned and can pass on to you, is that there are not enough doctors and not enough equipment in Portugal to fully staff both public and private hospitals. So for anything that's very serious, they only provide care in the public hospitals.
So all of the machinery, all of the equipment, all of the surgeons are prioritized in the public healthcare system. So when you have something very serious wrong with you, the public healthcare system is the one that's better equipped to actually help you.
So we were at the private hospital, and then they actually had to call an ambulance to take Ryan from the private hospital to the public hospital. That's actually closer to our house. Yeah. So if I had just taken him there in the first place, it would have saved a lot of steps. There. Yeah. But we didn't know.
Well, we didn't know. And that's the thing, it's like you don't know what you don't know. And sometimes these things can be massive with what type of impact it's got on your life. And that's really what happened to us. So they threw me into the ambulance, and I was holding on to my own defibrillator because I was having my heart attack at that time, and they weren't sure if they might have needed that machine to bring me back. And there we are, gunning it through our hometown of Setúbal from the private healthcare facility to the public hospital. And we got there, I got into a gurney, and they whisked me through straight into the operating room, which was super sci-fi, it felt like I was in the set of Transformers or something. So there was like tin foil everywhere and high-tech screens and amazing lighting and see-through drawing boards and stuff. It was really a whole thing. And I met my heart surgeon there, who said to me, listen, we don't have time to get the anesthetic working fully, so do you want to just go for it now? And this might hurt a lot, but we can get it sorted out now. And I said, dude, don't delay.
Yeah.
Get this thing done. And he shoved a catheter into my wrist, which he worked through my body. And I was watching all of this happening on a screen in front of me. And I could see it worm its way through my arm and through my chest to that very specific spot where I had this blockage. And he deployed a little stent, and that opened everything up again. And he looked over at me and said, oh, got it. Are you starting to feel a little bit better?
In English, too.
In English. And I was like, yes, sir. This is feeling a lot better. I can breathe for the first time in like an hour.
Ugh, it's crazy.
And he just said, oh, I'm glad to hear that. Have a good evening. Bye. And he left.
He was done.
Like, that's it. And I'm standing there and thinking, I nearly died. Like, I'm sitting there thinking, wow, that was as close as I was really ever going to get until that probably happens, to dying. And it was really such an experience, because even in the ambulance on the way down, they had filled me with morphine, because the pain is actually quite hectic that you go through when you're having a heart attack. And that morphine also has the impact of making you feel quite tired. So bit morbid, but it is what it is. But basically, if you are going to die, you're not going to die in incredible pain. You're just going to slip away. And so I was in that ambulance, coming down to the hospital under all of this morphine in this daze. And I remember the ladies tickling my feeties to keep me awake.
Yeah.
Because obviously if you're not conscious, they are going to have trouble understanding where you are, But anyway, got through the heart surgery, had the stent put in. They wheeled me up to the cardiac ICU, and that's where I hung out for like a week.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the amount of shock obviously all hit at that time. The physical impact of it hit me all in that morning, understanding what had happened to me, realizing what type of impact it had on my body in terms of recovery with regards to weakness and pain and all of those things. I had only really realized that I had had a heart attack the day after.
And you were 38 at the time. So I want to reiterate that no one expected this.
No, not even the doctor. So like they didn't understand why. And they just said it happens sometimes.
Yeah. So from my side, I drove Ryan to the private hospital, and then he took the ambulance to the public hospital. I wasn't allowed in the ambulance with him, so I drove myself. And then from the parking lot of that public hospital, I called my friend Flavio and Sarah. Shout out to them. Flavio is a firefighter and just a really fast responding person. I think when there's an emergency, he will be there. And no questions asked. I think Flavio arrived to that hospital in under 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And he got to the hospital in under 5 minutes, and I was like, this is what's happening. Ryan's in there. This is all I know. And he went in, and at that time, he took the burden of language translation off of my shoulders completely, because Flavio and Sarah are native Portuguese people, and Portuguese is their first language. Their English is phenomenal. And they were able to speak to everyone and make sure that I understood everything that was going on. Because with the NHS, when you were in Northern Ireland getting your appendix removed, I was allowed with you the entire time. They never separated us. They never asked me to leave. They never asked me to even move. The only time that I left your side was when I was choosing to leave to go check on Henry.
Yeah.
But with Portugal, I wasn't allowed near you for the vast majority of it. And when you were finally moved into that cardiac ICU, it was only 2 hours twice a day. So it was 4 hours a day that I was allowed there. And they were really strict about not letting me in early and making sure that I left at that time. So I think that when that's the situation, there's just so many hours that you don't know what's going on. And if the doctor doesn't happen to come in during the 2 hour window that I'm allowed to be there, then I don't know what's going on, because a lot of the time you weren't really feeling well enough to have those conversations.
Well, I think that's the thing, is that like there's a combination of things here, right? So the first thing is the treatment, again, was phenomenal.
Yep.
They did everything that they needed to do. They did everything that they needed to do and more.
Yes.
They cared. They were attentive. The place was clean. All of the equipment that they would ever need was readily available. The nurses did their rounds on time. There were specialist doctors that were available looking at my case and monitoring it. The food was there. It was what people needed. It was everything, right?
Yeah.
So all of that was great. But then comes in the expat part of it, of being in a foreign hospital where they don't speak the language that you speak. And to expect them to be speaking English to you is silly and unfair on them. And so you need to get through this whole experience in a different language. So learning on the odd occasion when the doctor does make it to you to tell you this is what's happening inside of your body means that you're never really going to get the full explanation of what it is that's actually happened to you, because it's technical. It's talking about how heart valves work. It's talking about how arteries have been operating.
It's not words that you're learning on Duolingo.
No, you it's different to ordering a coffee.
Yeah.
And as a doctor, you're wanting to help your patient, and there's never been any doubt about that. But it's also asking them to translate all of that stuff, which I don't think is really a reasonable thing to do or even maybe possible. And then it's also combined with the fact that my literacy in medical terms in a foreign language are virtually zero. So long story short, we're just saying that the communication while you're going through this kind of treatment and recovery is really a very hairy kind of thing to go through, because you actually don't know what's happening. And you never will, really.
And I think having this appendix NHS experience last week really helps me to compare these two experiences. And the biggest thing that I felt is that in the NHS, where everyone spoke English, it felt easier.
So much easier. It's like easy mode. And again, it's not a statement of character or intention or anything like that. It's just the way things are. Because when you're in Portugal and the people there are phenomenal, the healthcare system, again, is the same as with the NHS.
Phenomenal
It's
system.
slow, but it works.
Yep.
And you're going through that experience and you just will always struggle because that's not the language that you speak. That's not where you're from.
Yeah.
In Ireland, there are more things that I have in common with people linguistically and even maybe to a certain extent culturally, where I can actually connect with the people around me a lot more. There was a moment, in fact, when I was here in Northern Ireland for the appendix, where they had delayed my surgery yet again. And I had now not eaten for 2.5 days. And my ward mate's mom heard them delay the surgery. And she said, well, if you've delayed the surgery again, technically he should be allowed to eat because there'll still be enough time before his surgery for him to fast.
Yeah.
And that lady, who owed me nothing, I'm not related to her, she didn't need to help me or anything, she was the one that thought of telling them about this so that I could eat some food, which made me feel so much better.
It's true. I really feel like in Northern Ireland, in that hospital, it felt like we were kind of all on a team together. Yeah. And you were weirdly in the appendix ward. There were 4 men who were all getting their appendix removed at the same time.
It was a tough week for appendixes. Yeah.
But I really think everyone was in it together. There was this real solidarity versus in Portugal, there just wasn't a lot of chat or camaraderie between patients, even in Portuguese. It wasn't just you, the foreigner, were excluded. I just don't think that it's a culturally...
It's a culture thing.
Yeah, I just don't think it's part of their culture to be chatty in the hospital. You're there to get better and not to make friends.
Yeah, it's so much easier to be extroverted in a culture, in a community where you can speak the language and that's what the culture is attuned to.
And that's what they're already doing.
They would be doing that at the restaurant. They'd be doing that at the GA club. They'd be doing that on the street. Whereas in Portugal, people just aren't that way. So no one's cracking jokes in the waiting room. No one is offering people tea, in the reception area, because that's just not what they do. And that doesn't make it bad. It doesn't make them bad. It doesn't make what you need to do there any more difficult or any more easy. It's just a different. It's a different place.
Yeah.
And so anyway, we got through the week in cardiac ICU. Getting back to that story, I had to learn how to walk again a little bit. Liz helped me with that, taking a few steps at a time. I really was over that experience of being in that hospital at that time. It was very traumatic.
So why don't you tell us how you left the hospital, Ryan?
I left the hospital like a very bad movie where someone uttered the words, I think you can go home today. I packed all my stuff. I ripped my gown off. I took off all the sensors. I put my flippy floppies on. I grabbed my bag and I ran.
And Ryan called me. He said, hey, I'm at the front of the hospital. Come pick me up now. I said, what? So I go and I drive and I pick him up and he's just standing there outside of the hospital and his IV is still in.
Yes, my IV was still in. I didn't remember to ask them to take that out because I was in such a rush. And so we got home and we live at the top of a building, and at the bottom of the building, the bottom floor, the ground floor, is a pharmacy. also filled with amazing people. And I had to go to the pharmacy and speak to the pharmacist and say, listen, please, can you help me take this thing up my arm? And he was like, listen, dude, I don't ever want to have to do this for you again. So I'm doing this one time. And I said, thank you so much, senor. And he pulled this thing out of my arm, and then I was okay. But no, man, I was just so over that whole experience, because I'm sure you can tell that on one hand, there's so much recovery that you need to do physically. There's so many things that could potentially happen to you after a heart attack. It's a very stressful thing. But I think the mental and emotional and psychological impact of going through something like that has probably been, it's definitely been the most difficult thing to deal with. And I would say it's been 2 years. So next month, pretty much this time, will be exactly 2 years. I think that is what has taken the most work to deal with.
Without
a doubt. The psychological impact of it. And I mean, today's episode is about healthcare in different countries, but really, no matter what happens, no matter how long I live, no matter where I live, no matter what happens for the rest of my life, I will always owe Portugal a debt of gratitude that is linked to me being alive.
Portugal saved your life.
Because they saved my life. And when I say they saved my life, it wasn't, again, same thing as with our Northern Ireland with the appendix. Everyone did everything that they could do to help me. And they cared for me, and they made an effort for me, and that's why I'm alive.
Yeah.
And I come onto this podcast every week, and I'll have something stupid and inane to comment about how annoying Portugal and Portuguese people can be every now and then, and I complain and I whine and stuff like that. And it really does put things into context. You would ask, well, Ryan, if you are so unhappy with so many small things, why is it that you still feel like you've got positive stuff to say about Portugal and you want to stay there? It's because there's certain things that Portugal and Portuguese people do and have which really have changed my life for the better.
Yeah.
And I will always be grateful for it. And for as long as I need to be grateful for it, I can't be completely down or off on that country, you know? So yeah, that's my heart attack story. Gosh. So Liz, I feel like I've been stealing the limelight here with all of my major medical and health issues globally. Have you had any medical stories?
Yeah, so I am definitely not as exciting as you. So I do have one more medical emergency situation that I wasn't the main participant of, but I was a part of that story. I was living with some people from Colombia, a guy named Nelson and another guy named Cesar. And Cesar was feeling terrible and went to the hospital, and they told him that he had kidney stones. And Cesar barely spoke English. And I mean, he could say, hello, my name is, he could say, how are you? He could maybe do a little bit of food ordering, but not much past that. I spoke English really well, but I didn't speak amazing Spanish. I could get by and I had some words. And at that point, I was speaking Spanish regularly because I was living with Spanish speakers, but it wasn't amazing. And then Nelson was in the middle. Spanish was his first language, but his English was significantly better than Cesar's. So it wasn't perfect and he didn't understand a lot of the technical medical words, but he could understand a bit. So all three of us went to the hospital together to talk to the doctor. And the doctor would explain something to me in English, and then I would explain it to Nelson in a mix of English and Spanish. And then Nelson would explain it to Cesar purely in Spanish. And it took us forever because there were so many words that the doctor would say, and then I would try to say something similar to that. So I didn't know the Spanish word for this, so I'm trying to get that. And there were no translators available.
You didn't have Google Translate then.
We didn't have Google Translate at that time. And we were just trying to make it work. And it was really difficult. But we got there in the end. And then Cesar's lying on the table, getting wheeled to go to his surgery. And in Spanish, Nelson says to him, They're going to give you double D's. They'll look great. And Cesar's eyes opened so wide. And he had no idea, like, is he telling the truth? And I think you're in that moment. You're getting wheeled to surgery in a foreign language. You don't understand anything that's going on. And we laugh about it now, but I think in that moment, it really was so scary for him. And everything went well, and the surgery was fine. And then we had to go back, the three of us, for follow-ups because we had to play this game where I would hear it in English. I would explain it to Nelson.
Broken medical telephone.
Oh, it was terrible, but it was the only way to do it. And he also paid a fortune for that.
I thought they had free public health care in Australia.
They do, but you have to wait.
Oh.
And they told him that a kidney stone removal surgery isn't going to be a priority, and they didn't know how long he would have to wait. So they really, in the description that the doctor was giving to me, that I gave to Nelson, that Nelson gave to Cesar, he really pushed very hard that he needed to do this in private.
Well, also the thing is that I know kidney stones are like brutally painful. So it's not something that you can live with until your number comes around.
Exactly.
Yo, that's scary. But this is the thing, Liz, that you're saying. Like, there's the language part of it in terms of what you're explaining, but also that fear of if something is administratively on one side or the other, your experience of things can change very drastically, financially, in terms of the treatment, in terms of time frames, all of these things, because you don't really have much control because you don't make those decisions. So you're just sitting there thinking, what's going to happen to me? And I really will always be very nervous about that, because even though 2 times now in very serious situations we've come out on the right side of things, I'm also acutely aware that that might not be the case the next time or the next time or the next time.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of people go through this globally. You know, it's I think it's underreported when you talk about the stress of healthcare for expats and immigrants, because you're going through a completely different experience that a lot of people might take for granted in a particular place. And I'm not saying that, you know, there isn't risk associated to people getting medical treatment in their home countries. I'm just saying that there are more risks for people who are from other places to go through this.
And it's the thing of being alone. I think that we were so lucky that this happened to happen on a weekend. And it was a Saturday that we spent the entire day in the hospital, because I don't know if I would have been able to take a day off of work because my housemate was in the hospital and needed me to translate. Would my boss have allowed that? Nelson, I don't think his boss would have allowed that for sure. And for both of us to be able to take a whole day off of work to sit in the hospital, we were in that hospital for the entire day that day. And you can't do that alone. If Cesar was alone, he wouldn't have understood anything that was going on.
No chance. It's not as if there's a lot of people walking around Australian hospitals who are able to speak Spanish and then to break away from their time to come speak to one guy who's got kidney stones. The chances are virtually zero. No, it's really, it's a huge thing, hey.
And I think about the NHS again, where everyone who happens to be in the UK at any given time, if there is an emergency, they will be treated. It makes me feel so good. And it makes me feel so angry that the whole world isn't that way, especially countries like the US. They can't treat people who are having an emergency without bankrupting them.
It's a heavy thing, Liz. And like I said, I don't know how to work through that. I constantly am aware that we are so lucky to have had what we've had, to have gotten as far as we've gotten. And I say that without even making the assumption that it's not going to affect us in the future. There's always that risk. If we're in the wrong place and something happens, life will change very drastically for us.
It's true.
I had my appendix issue here in Northern Ireland. I had my heart attack in Portugal. 2 places where you get this amazing healthcare and this amazing treatment.
Yeah.
If we weren't in these places, we would be in a different situation now. But thankfully, we are where we are, and we did get what we experienced, and I'm grateful for that. And I really hope that everyone gets that opportunity now or in the future.
Me too. Everyone, every human, regardless of where they're from, regardless of where they live, deserves high quality medical treatment.
Absolutely. Are we ready for Would You Rather?
Let's do it. This is a Would You Rather medical emergency edition.
Super fun segment.
Okay. But would you rather need emergency medical treatment in a big city or in a small town? I'm going to go first. And I am going small town on this.
Why?
Because I think that the things that you actually need, like emergency things, are going to be available to you anywhere. And I want that more personal, people care about you, that you would get in a smaller hospital.
I would choose big city. Fix me. Just fix me. I don't know what's wrong with me. Please help me. I don't know what to do. You send me 50 doctors in rotation who really don't care about me, but they are willing to fix me because it's their job. Fix me. So I choose big city.
I think if it's not an emergency situation, if it's a diagnosis, I'm choosing big city every time.
One of the reasons why I would say big city also is that I like the fact that they have everything that you might need. I have a paranoia about needing medical care, being in a small town, and them saying, yeah, we've run out of surgical gloves, pal. So you might need to wait here for another day, or we're going to need to drive you to another country or whatever it happens to be to get treated because we don't have those gloves. And I just think if I can do something to avoid that one-on-one care and treatment that you're talking about, which is what we've had, really, I've absolutely loved too. But I think in a isolated would you rather, I'm going to say big.
Really, I think this Northern Ireland experience did it for me because I just loved it. I thought everyone was so nice.
I don't blame you.
Okay, this one's a little more ridiculous. Would you rather wake up from surgery with a new haircut or wearing someone else's clothes?
I'd say a new haircut. I'm always ready for a fresh new look. Maybe like I'm starting a new life without an appendix. If they had given me, I don't know, a mohawk or something, I would have been like, this is my appendix mohawk. What would you have chosen?
In both of Ryan's emergency surgeries, they have had to shave him. And it is very funny to see the way that they shave.
Yeah, I've got like patchwork across my body, like on my legs. I don't know, they needed to shave giant squares. They needed to shave
chest.
Like, chunks out of my chest, on my tum-tum, everything.
I would choose wearing someone else's clothes.
Who is this person's clothes that you're wearing? Like, what are they wearing?
Probably mine.
Oh, so look at all switcheroo. Do you think that happens? That's weird. Okay.
Okay, last one. From your vast hospital experience, who had the best hospital food?
Northern Ireland, hands down, man. Unfortunately, I was fasting at the time, so I wasn't able to eat. But this lady came past with all the trays of food, and she was calling out all of the different options and possibilities. Chicken curry and rice, chicken and chips, bangers and mash, chicken pie. What else did they have? Burgers. It was awesome. And I was like heartbroken realizing that I couldn't have any of it. But yeah, I think if you're in hospital and someone offers you some light chicken and chips, you're going to feel better already, You?
So I've never actually stayed in hospital long enough to be served food. Yeah. But when my mom was sick, I went to a lot of hospitals, and we got to know the different hospitals in New York based on the food that they were serving. And one of my favorites was this butternut squash macaroni and cheese at Good Samaritan Hospital. Oh, that was delicious.
That left a mark on you, eh? Gosh.
And I would always order 2 of them, and they would always bring extra so that I could have one too, because it was so good. And then in St. Catherine's Hospital, the food was awful, like really, really, really bad. But the cafeteria had freshly baked cookies every day at exactly 3 p.m. And all of the doctors and all of the nurses would like run there to get their cookies. And I would always be there early and waiting. I would always buy an extra cookie to give to my mom's nurse. It was a very delicious cookie.
Nice. I did want to mention hospital food being really interesting. In Portugal, while I was recovering from my heart attack, so much fish in the hospital, prepared in many different ways. And I don't know if that might be a good way of being introduced to Portuguese cuisine, but really, if you did want to get a taste of the country, they're offering it at the public hospital. So, if you're unlucky enough to be in that situation, there is an upside, So, yeah, something to think about. But anyway, folks, thank you so much for listening and sharing with us this week. I think a bit more of a sensitive topic, a bit more of a heavy topic this week. I am very grateful for both Liz and I to have gotten this far with whatever healthcare was ever available to us. We don't take that lightly. We know that that's not always available for everyone, and we know that we're talking from a place of privilege and certainly luck to a large extent.
And huge thank you to every doctor, every nurse, every hospital staff member, every ambulance driver, everyone who works even tangentially related to the medical field. I really think that it's when people are in a difficult situation, it can be really easy to not be nice to those people.
Yeah.
And I think they deal with so much, and really all of our lives are in their hands. And I'm so grateful for the good hands that we've been in.
Absolutely. And we, like I said, just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing in this with us, and look forward to talking with you again next week. Please, if you've got any thoughts or anything you want to share, anything that you might have been through, we would love to hear from you, because we know that there's so many different things in this experience of being an immigrant expat that a lot of people don't talk about, and a lot of things that people don't want to know or share, but we want to know about it. So please reach out. We're on Instagram at expatslisten, or we're on email at expatslisten@gmail.com. Please feel free to leave us a review, leave us some stars, subscribe, share. All of those things make such a big difference to us being able to share this podcast with more people, and we'd really appreciate it if you helped us with that. And until we speak again, the best of health to you all. Bye-bye.